made the ask, put the effort in. And that, guys, is what it's going to take. You have to leave nothing on the table, if that phrase makes sense. You have to try every possibility. It's the second thing I heard is, it's not easy. It takes a lot of effort, okay? We know this. It takes a lot of effort. The third thing, and I am speaking honestly and from experience when I say this. I said yesterday, I know you guys are sometimes competing against each other for grants and so on. But more important than that, you are a community. And so I have personally been in the situation where you say, well, that may be possible for them, or they're, they're taking, they're raising $100,000, and that's $100,000 that's not going to me, right? Some of you were thinking that in the back of your heads. I know you were thinking that. Here is what the real value of what they are doing. You can look at philanthropy, at giving, in two different ways. You can look at it as a fixed pie. There is only so much, and what you get, I don't get. That is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is what we say, a rising tide carries all the boats. Which means whatever one of you does benefits the others. And I have personally been in these situations, and I can tell you from 30 years, the reality is the rising tide. The reality is that if a person gives €1 a month to 1 in a million, they are much more likely, the next day to give to your organization than if they had never made that initial donation. And I'm really speaking honestly and from the heart and from experience when I say this. So again, this is why it's so important for you all on a continuing basis to share your experiences, to know what one another is doing so you can build on that. Questions, challenges, issues? Yes?
I'll return to the question I asked earlier about accountability and of our mission of the organization, incompatible donors, things we are ruling out. And I was wondering also, for example, for us business is out of question except for pro bono, because we are also monitoring the work of private security companies, and we don't want their money, and much of the other companies in Serbia are trying to work close to the government, and we are criticizing government. So business is, except for pro bono work, is not our target. But what I'm interested in for individuals, how do you make a profile of your individual giver? Because it's different when it's humanitarian organization and when you do analysis and
Yes.
You're a think tank. How do you get to a profile of your individual?
Yeah. Clearly, it is much more difficult, again, for those of you who have these broader, less tangible missions. I think what you have to do over and over again, and this is where the strategic plan, some of the pieces of the strategic plan exercise that we went through yesterday will be helpful, is you have to continually present your results, okay? So who benefits? There are two categories. Let me take a step back. On one of the, I do a whole seminar sometimes on gifts from individuals. And what I might do is share with the ISC staff so they can share with the rest of you some of the slides and information that I use in that presentation. But there is one of the slides that I use comes from a book called, I think it's The 7 Faces of Philanthropy or The 7 Faces of Giving. It's a guy whose last name is Prince, and I think his first name is Russell. And what he talks about are, he's done research, and he's found that there are 7 types of motivations for individual donors. I can tell you right now I'm going to fail my own test. I'm not going to be able to call up all 7 of them. But I'm going to try to share with you a few because I think it will help answer your question and probably others in the room. One of the types of givers he calls the altruist. And that is the giver who gives from their heart. It is the person who is motivated by the pure charitable instinct. I give because it is the right thing that feels right in my heart. Another kind is the giver who gives back. This institution or country or community has been good to me, and so I give back to it. And a very typical example there is the alumni of a university or a school, right? Another kind is what he calls the communitarian. And that's the person who gives because they believe sort of it's their civic duty, it's the right thing to do. That kind of person might be, more applicable for some of you guys. I give because it's the right thing to do. It's part of being in a democracy. It's part of being a member of a community, and I give for that reason. Another person, another type, and think of people you know. I'm sure you can think of people that you know as I'm going to be able to get at least 5 of them, and we'll give you the others. Another person is the socialite. I give because my friends are giving. I give because I get to go to the reception. I give because it increases my social standing to give. Another is, I can't remember what he calls them, but it's the person who is pious. It's a religious motivation. And of course, this is what the religious institutions rely upon. But it's the person who gives because they believe that, that God wants them to give. And, that's not just for the religious institutions. There are many people who are motivated in their hearts by religion, and that's another, or by their spiritual beliefs. And so that's another type. There are 2 more, I can't remember what they are, but I'll send them to you. And thinking of those kinds of categories might be helpful. Another thing that might be helpful is just kind of subcategorizing individuals. So I know when we talked about 1 in a million, we talked about having different categories of people who might give, and then essentially having volunteers who would kind of be leaders for outreach in each of those kinds of categories. And some of them we came up with, you might have to help me out here, were small communities or small and medium-sized communities. Could we reach one person in a particular community with your message, and then they spread it out to their networks? They become kind of the captain of the mini campaign in that small community. What were some of the, one of them was the church and religious, huh?
Pensioners, retired people.
What?
Pensioners.
Pensioners was another category. Yeah.
Category to get to.
Right, but you know, that was another category they thought of. So thinking about categories and thinking about whoever believes in you now, make sure that you totally exploit their networks. Think about, Anna mentioned going to events, okay? Where can you go to reach people who might be of interest, or to network with people who might be interested? One of the, I'll just give you an example of the creativity. One of the organizations I worked with in Mexico was trying to reach the international companies, like the U.S. companies who have plants in Mexico, many workers in Mexico. How do you start reaching the leadership of those companies? Do you know what they did? They started networking at the hairdresser salons. Why? The wives of every one of those corporate executives were going to just a handful, just a few, like 3 salons in that community. So and what do we know about hairdressing salons universally? The hairdressers know everything about everybody, right? Because they're there, they're cutting your hair, and you're just chatting. The guys in this room are like, are you kidding me? But it's true. The women in this room know that I am speaking the truth. So that was the way that they chose to get to those individuals. So think about where the people you're trying to reach congregate, and go there and get to be part of those networks. Is that somewhat helpful? You have to start by this brainstorming process. There's not a list. We can't hand you the list. You have to develop it. Okay, I'm thinking we're running behind time, so I'm going to speed things up a little bit here. Let me look at my... I knew today's agenda was going to be the tight one. Hold on just one second. Let me see how we're doing. Yeah, we're behind time. Okay. All right, what we're going to do, I'm going to introduce endowment giving, and then Tanya's going to make a presentation. Hold on, I got to get back to my... Okay. Quickly, we talked about earned income. Earned income is the other side of the piece. We have two different... earned income is where your organization generates your own revenues. It's anything that's not gifts and grants, and it includes, and this is a little bit confusing, but it includes what we call passive earned income. Passive earned income is investing money to get money, okay? So you're taking the step of investing the money. There's not a client involved. You're not selling anything. You're not providing a service, but you are investing money in order to earn money. And so that's passive earned income. The other earned income can be either related to your mission or not related to your mission. Usually, you want it to be related to your mission because it reinforces your mission out in the world. Why do we like earned income strategies? Pretty much it's the mirror side of why we don't like gifts and grants. You get diversified revenues, you get greater flexibility. The earned income strategies generally earn you money that's totally unrestricted, that you can use toward any purpose that's important to your organization, including your own running costs. It makes a positive impression on donors, all right? When you go to a donor and say, we're generating half of our revenues ourselves, and we're only asking you for the other half, that's a much more positive message than just saying, we need all this money, right? And they know that you are working to support your own costs. It also is more predictable and more stable and more under your control than gifts from external donors. What are the limitations? It's not appropriate for all NGOs. You may simply not have the capacities to mount these earned income strategies. It's not easy. If you're going to start something like a business, you have to do a full-scale business plan, just like any other business would. It is not a way of getting quick money, and it's not it's not for an organization that's in financial crisis. All right? You need to be already somewhat stable to begin to look at these earned income strategies. Oops, it's not risk-free. If it were, everybody would be starting a business, right? And the one I want to emphasize is this last one, or that you might not think about. Sometimes, actually often, earning your own income ends up creating a culture clash. So I'm warning you about this up front. What happens is your other donors, your board, and especially your staff will say, wait a second, I thought I was here for charitable purposes. I thought I was giving for charitable. I thought you were a charity. And now you're starting to look more like a business. And I don't like that. And so what I am warning you is not so much not to do this or not to consider this, but I want you to think about how you're going to communicate what you're doing to your constituency, and not to underestimate the communication task if you start earning your own income. You need to tell people why you're doing it and why it's positive and why it's adding to and not detracting from your mission. Okay, quickly. Investment income. Several types. And then we're going to take a little break before Tanya shares their experience with endowment. Types of passive earned income. You build an endowment. Does everybody know when I say endowment, what it's a pot of money that you set aside to earn income on. Okay, so you get the income from that pot of money. You don't touch the pot of money. You don't use the pot of money. You only earn income on it. You can also earn income on your short-term balances. Maybe a donor is kind enough to give you money at the beginning of the year that you use throughout the course of the year. Are you earning money on that money? And there are ways of doing it in Serbia. And any other investment income. In the U.S., in the organization that I worked for in the U.S., we actually earned something like a third of our running costs from short-term money flowing through, making sure it was invested, making sure that money was always invested, and we got about a third of our running costs from that. We know that endowment is one of the most durable sources. Once you build the endowment, it's always there. And then I'm going to let Tanya talk. Let's take a break of about 15 minutes. You guys have been very patient, very kind. I appreciate it. And we'll come back and Tanya will do a presentation and we'll talk about some of the other earned income sources.